Just lastly, I want to ask you about something that Texas Governor Greg Abbott just said. He was asked about the Texas abortion bill and uh, why force a rape or incest victim survivor to carry a pregnancy to term. This is how he responded. I want to play this for our viewers.
Why force a rape or incest victim to carry a pregnancy to term?
It doesn't require that at all because obviously it provides at least 6 weeks for a person to be able to get an abortion. And so, for one, it doesn't provide that. That said, however, let's make something very clear. Rape is a crime, and Texas will work tirelessly to make sure that we eliminate all rapists from the streets of Texas by aggressively going out and arresting them and prosecuting them and getting them off the streets. So goal number one in the state of Texas is to eliminate rape so that no woman, no person will be a victim of rape.
I'm wondering what you thought when you heard that.
Well, I find Governor Abbott's comments disgusting, and I think there's twofold. One, I don't know if he is familiar with a menstruating person's body. In fact, I do know that he's not familiar with a woman, with a female or menstruating person's body, because if he did, he would know that you don't have 6 weeks. Is that quote unquote 6 weeks? And I'm sorry we have to break it down on, break down biology 101 on national television. But in case no one has informed him before in his life, 6 weeks pregnant means 2 weeks late for your period. And 2 weeks late on your period for any person with a menstrual cycle can happen if you're stressed, if your diet changes, or for really no reason at all. So you don't have 6 weeks. That's first things first. The second area of this, when he talks about going after rapists and this language of that he uses about getting rapists off the streets, the majority of people who are raped and who are sexually assaulted are assaulted by someone that they know. And these aren't just predators that are walking around the streets at night. They are people's uncles, they are teachers, they are family friends. And when something like that happens, it takes a very long time, first of all, for any victim to come forward. And second of all, when a victim comes forward, they don't necessarily want to bring their case into the carceral system. They don't want to re-traumatize themselves by going to court. They don't necessarily all want to report a family friend to a police precinct, let alone in the immediate aftermath of the trauma of a sexual assault. And so while some victims do use that recourse, and that is something that is completely available, and if that is part of their process, that's great. But this idea that we're going to, quote unquote, end rape when the same type of, frankly, rape culture and the same type of misogynistic culture that informed this abortion law to begin with is also, those beliefs are held by the governor himself and this Texas state legislature. Frankly, there are many people in power, as we know from the Me Too movement, that commit sexual assault, that help their friends cover up these crimes. And some of them even serve in the same state legislatures that are voting on these just these anti-choice bills. It's awful. And he speaks from such a place of deep ignorance and it's not just ignorance, it's ignorance that is hurting people across this country.
You said rape culture and misogynistic culture are behind this Texas bill to begin with. Could you just explain that, to how you feel about that to people?
Sure. So when we talk about the law that was passed in Texas, we know that anti-choice bills are not about being pro-life. Because if they were about being pro-life, then the Republican Party would support, frankly, an agenda that helps guaranteed health care, that helps ensure that people who do give birth that don't have the resources to care for a child can have that care for a child. So we know that none of this is about life. None of this is about supporting life. What this is about is controlling women's bodies and controlling people who are not cisgender men. This is about making sure that someone like me as a woman or any menstruating person in this country cannot make decisions over their own body. And people like Governor Abbott and Mitch McConnell want to have more control over a woman's body than that woman or that person has over themselves. And what that shares what that shares with rape culture is that sexual assault is about the abuse of power, and sexual assault is about asserting control over another person. And the ease with which these men seek to do that to other people is atrocious. It is morally reprehensible, and they cannot even begin to understand the agonizing decisions that people have to make, including in cases of miscarriage, rape, and incest.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.